Today we head to Hollywood, Florida, in December 2016, where the body of an 18-year-old boy who worked as a gigolo was discovered in a shocking and humiliating situation. This is the story of how his hidden relationships with older women eventually led to his tragic and violent death. Ethan Sullivan, also known by his alias Baby Boy Romeo, was just 18 when his life took a tragic turn. Growing up in Hollywood, Florida, with his father Gerald Sullivan, Ethan dropped out of school after 7th grade. Despite his limited education, he gained a reputation for his good looks, charm, and his ability to attract and satisfy older women. Ethan's striking appearance and self-assured nature made him hard to miss. His charm made him an ideal companion for older, wealthy women looking for affection and intimacy. By late 2016, Ethan had become well known in South Florida's high-end retirement circles. For a teenager, his life was far from ordinary. While other boys his age were finishing high school or getting ready for college, Ethan was already deep in a life of luxury. He slept with wealthy older women, many old enough to be his grandmother, in exchange for lavish gifts. His lovers adored him, spoiling him with expensive presents and money. Ethan lived on the edge, often boasting about the many women he satisfied regularly. Ethan's social media was flooded with pictures flaunting luxury watches, designer outfits, and flashy cars. He was often seen at upscale places like Joe's Stone Crab and the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino, living a lifestyle far beyond his age. But beneath the surface, despite his bold exterior, Ethan's life was anything but stable. Ethan's father, Gerald, took on a major role in his life, stepping in as his manager. At first, Ethan didn't mind, but as time passed, tension grew between them. As Ethan's earnings increased, Gerald's focus shifted from being a supportive parent to acting more like a business partner, with his main interest centered on how much he could gain from Ethan's sexual success. In the days before his death, Ethan was growing more and more frustrated with the situation. He had begun distancing himself from his father and confided in close friends about his desire to take charge of his own life. Ethan had aspirations that went far beyond his current lifestyle. Ethan aspired to move on from his involvement with older women and envisioned starting a legitimate business, possibly a high-end bar or nightclub in Miami. Unfortunately, those dreams were abruptly halted. He was last seen alive on December 2nd, 2016, just days before his murder. Ethan had no inkling that the relationships in life he had created would soon become fatal. On the morning of December 5th, 2016, around 9:30 a.m., the body of 18-year-old Ethan Sullivan was found. The grim discovery was made by Midge Feinstein, one of his many older lovers. Midge, 91, resided in the upscale Palm Breeze apartments in Hollywood, Florida, where she and Ethan frequently met. That morning, she anticipated his arrival for breakfast, a routine he sometimes followed after staying overnight. When he didn't show up, she grew worried and went to check on him in the guest bathroom. What Midge found was horrifying. Ethan's body was slumped over the toilet, his pants around his ankles, with a gunshot wound to his head. It was evident he was dead, and the position of his body indicated he had been taken by surprise. Shocked and frightened, Midge screamed for help and quickly called 911 on her gold-plated cell phone, her voice shaking as she relayed the grim discovery. The retired socialite, known for her calm demeanor, was now in a state of panic, struggling to articulate her words. Police and emergency responders arrived on the scene within minutes. By that time, Midge was outside her apartment, visibly shaken, sitting in a cushioned chair on her balcony with a glass of whiskey in hand. Neighbors peeked through their windows as police tape was stretched around the building. The holiday season had just begun, and the flashing police lights and crime scene investigations starkly contrasted with the festive decorations going up around the complex. Despite her distress, Midge fully cooperated with the police. She explained her sexual relationship with Ethan, describing him as a charming young man who had become significant in her life. As detectives launched their investigation, they began to speculate about who else in Ethan's complicated web of relationships might have had a motive to harm him. The Hollywood Police Department responded swiftly to Midge Feinstein's 911 call on December 5, 2016, arriving at the Palm Breeze apartments. The lead detectives on the case were Maria Leva Gonzalez and Todd Mathers, both experienced veterans known for their ability to crack difficult cases. Gonzalez, recognized for her meticulous attention to detail, was the first to arrive on the scene. Mathers, her partner, had a more relaxed demeanor but was equally sharp at piecing together clues. The crime scene they faced was both disturbing and puzzling. Ethan Sullivan's body was discovered in the guest bathroom, slumped over the toilet with his pants down and a fatal gunshot wound to his head. There were no signs of a struggle, no overturned furniture or broken items. The room was unsettlingly tidy, save for the pool of blood beneath Ethan's body. It was evident that his killer had acted quickly, surprising him in an intimate and vulnerable moment. Detectives quickly began canvassing the area, taking in the quiet holiday atmosphere of the upscale retirement community. Festive wreaths adorned the apartment doors, and soft Christmas music played in the background as residents gathered to discuss the morning's shocking events. Many of them recognized Ethan, referring to him as the yummy boy toy who frequently visited Midge Feinstein and several other women in the building. The gossip further complicated the investigation. As Gonzalez and Mathers examined the bathroom, they focused intently on any potential evidence. The gun that killed Ethan was missing, and there were no visible fingerprints on any surfaces in the bathroom. Forensic technicians arrived shortly after to dust for fingerprints and collect blood spatter samples. They also tested Ethan's hands for gunshot residue, confirming he had not fired the weapon. The absence of a struggle and any defensive wounds indicated that Ethan had been completely caught off guard by the attack. The detectives were perplexed by the cold, calculated nature of the murder. A teenage boy had been shot execution style in what should have been a safe and private space. They questioned Midge Feinstein again, inquiring if she had heard anything unusual that morning, such as a gunshot or the sound of a stranger entering the apartment. Midge insisted that everything had been quiet until she discovered the body. As the investigation progressed, detectives began to suspect that this murder was not a random act of violence. Ethan's secretive lifestyle and his complicated relationships with several wealthy women expanded the list of potential suspects by the minute. The first suspect the police focused on was Dolly Patterson, one of Ethan Sullivan's longtime lovers. At 83 years old, Dolly was a retired Broadway actress who had enjoyed her prime years in the spotlight. While her glory days were behind her, she lived a life of luxury, supported by a moderately successful career and savvy financial investments. In December 2016, Dolly lived in the same upscale Palm Breeze apartments as Ethan and Midge Feinstein, enjoying a comfortable lifestyle surrounded by mementos from her past. Her home was filled with framed playbills, photos with celebrities, and stacks of records. Yet her most treasured possession in her later years was Ethan, whom she spoiled with gifts and money in exchange for sex. Dolly had always been possessive of Ethan, viewing him as her final great romance. Friends described her as sharp-witted, even in her old age, but years of bitterness and loneliness had taken their toll. The revelation of Ethan's sexual relationships with other wealthy women, particularly Midge, fueled her jealousy significantly. Those close to Dolly reported that she frequently expressed frustration over Ethan's wandering affections, feeling deeply betrayed. This jealousy positioned her as a prime suspect in Ethan's murder. When the police brought her in for questioning, Dolly appeared calm yet sharp, fully aware of the gravity of the situation. Despite her frail appearance, Dolly was mentally alert, responding to questions with quick wit. She admitted to feeling furious upon discovering that Ethan was involved with other women. When asked where she had been at the time of the murder, she stated she had been home sleeping and hadn't heard anything unusual. She expressed sadness over Ethan's death, but dodged direct questions about their relationship. At one point, she attempted to downplay the seriousness of their affair, referring to Ethan as just a bleeping boy and herself as a dried-up old bleep. The detectives pressed her further, inquiring if she was aware of Ethan's relationship with Midge or any other women in the building. Dolly's expression tightened at the mention of Midge, but she insisted that she had accepted Ethan's other partners. "We all knew that boy had a wandering eye," she said, "but I didn't care. That boy gave me the best moments of my life." Despite her composed demeanor, the police found Dolly's jealousy suspicious and continued to scrutinize her. They searched her apartment, looking for any link to the murder weapon. However, no gun was found, and forensic evidence from her home revealed nothing unusual. Her financial support of Ethan and her past outbursts regarding his infidelity made her motive apparent. However, without concrete evidence connecting her to the murder, the detectives couldn't hold her. Dolly left the station, but she remained a person of interest as the investigation moved forward. The second suspect the police turned their attention to was Midge Feinstein, a 91-year-old resident of the same upscale Palm Breeze apartments as Dolly Patterson and Ethan Sullivan. Once the wife of a prominent investment banker, Midge was frequently seen at glamorous events across South Florida. By December 2016, however, she had become a widow and settled into a quieter life, yet she still retained her elegance and no-nonsense attitude. Midge had been involved with Ethan for the past year, offering him financial support and lavish gifts, much like Dolly. While she was aware of the transactional nature of their relationship, she had developed genuine feelings for him. Friends and neighbors noted that she had grown increasingly possessive of Ethan over time. She had even confided in one of her bridge partners that she wasn't going to be replaced by some younger woman, referring to one of Ethan's other lovers. The notion that Midge, at 91, was competing for Ethan's attention had become a running joke among the older women in the building, many of whom were also involved with him. On December 6, 2016, the day after Ethan's body was discovered, detectives questioned Midge at her apartment. She welcomed the detectives graciously, offering them tea in her elegantly decorated living room, furnished with high-end pieces from brands like Ethan Allen and Crate Barrel. Despite her composure, a noticeable tension hung in the air. When asked about her relationship with Ethan, Midge was open, admitting that she had feelings for him and had provided him with financial support. She told the police, her voice steady, "I knew what this was. It wasn't love. He was just my man whore. He gave me pleasure, and I gave him dollar bills." When detectives asked Midge where she had been at the time of the murder, she claimed she had been home alone, watching adult movies on her laptop and smoking marijuana. Midge remained calm and collected throughout the questioning, seemingly unfazed by the line of inquiry. However, her demeanor shifted when the detectives mentioned Dolly Patterson. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she remarked, "That old bat is jealous of anyone who gets his attention. That bleeping woman was always so dramatic, acting like Ethan's attention was her property." While Midge appeared composed during the interrogation, the police noted her potential motive: her jealousy over Ethan's other lovers, coupled with the financial support she provided him, made her a significant suspect. However, like Dolly, there was no direct evidence linking Midge to the murder. The police allowed her to stay in her apartment, but kept a close watch on her as the investigation continued. On December 8, 2016, the case took a dramatic turn when authorities uncovered startling new evidence regarding Gerald Sullivan, Ethan's father. It was a chilly, clear morning in Hollywood, Florida, with temperatures hovering around 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Detectives were meticulously analyzing the evidence collected from the crime scene and reviewing various leads when they stumbled upon crucial information that changed the course of their investigation. The breakthrough came when investigators unearthed evidence that Gerald had been secretly filming his son's sexual encounters with elderly women. Gerald had installed hidden cameras in the apartments of these wealthy women, capturing Ethan engaging in various sexual acts with them. This footage was sold to adult film producers in Japan, where content featuring elderly white women was in high demand. The financial profit from this illegal operation was significant, funding Gerald's hidden drug addiction, which he had managed to conceal from everyone, including Ethan. The police's discovery was shocking. Financial records showed transactions linked to the sale of the sexually explicit footage and revealed a pattern of purchases for drugs, indicating how Gerald was exploiting the money from his son. They found evidence of Gerald's hidden drug habit, which had remained hidden from Ethan and those around him. This illicit operation became a key factor in the case. Detectives also uncovered a series of text messages between Gerald and Ethan that illuminated their strained relationship. The messages revealed that Ethan had recently learned about his father's illegal activities, heightening tensions between them. Furious and feeling deeply betrayed, Ethan had threatened to expose Gerald's operations. In messages sent just days before his death, Ethan warned his father that he would reveal the truth about the filmed encounters and Gerald's drug use if he didn't stop his exploitative practices. The discovery of these messages provided a compelling motive for Gerald. Faced with the threat of exposure and the potential loss of his lucrative illegal enterprise, Gerald had every reason to want to silence Ethan. The new evidence clearly suggested that his desperation to protect his secret and his drug addiction had driven him to murder. After uncovering this critical information, the police decided it was time to bring Gerald Sullivan in for questioning. Gerald, 47, was a failed businessman who had struggled financially for years, attempting various ventures like real estate and car sales, all without success. By late 2016, he had become financially dependent on his son Ethan's unconventional lifestyle. As Ethan's manager, Gerald oversaw his son's sexual relationships with wealthy older women, making sure they kept the money and gifts flowing. Behind the scenes, however, Gerald was hiding secrets that would change the investigation entirely. Police had already learned that Gerald had been at the Palm Breeze apartments on the day of Ethan's murder, thanks to security footage. Now, detectives were equipped with the text messages between Gerald and Ethan, which highlighted their strained relationship. Gerald arrived at the police station on December 10, 2016, looking both nervous and calm, dressed in an old polo shirt and jeans. Detective Puglia, who had been leading the investigation, began the interrogation by asking Gerald about his relationship with his son. At first, Gerald played the role of a concerned father, describing Ethan as a sweet kid and claiming he was merely trying to help his son navigate his complicated relationships with the older women who supported them. However, as the detectives pressed harder, Gerald's calm demeanor began to unravel. When asked about his presence at the Palm Breeze apartments on the day of the murder, he hesitated, fumbling for an explanation. He claimed he had been there only to check on Ethan, but the detectives weren't convinced. As the interrogation progressed, they confronted Gerald with the text messages, and he became visibly agitated, struggling to maintain his composure. His hands shook as he attempted to downplay the messages, insisting they were merely part of a typical father-son disagreement. However, when Detective Puglia pointed out that Ethan had threatened to sever ties with him just days before the murder, Gerald's demeanor changed. He became defensive, raising his voice and accusing the detectives of twisting the facts. The pressure mounted, and Gerald was running out of excuses. His financial troubles were well documented, making it evident to the detectives that he had a lot to lose if Ethan followed through on his threat to cut ties. The motive for murder was becoming increasingly apparent. Gerald couldn't afford to lose the income generated by Ethan's relationships. The detectives decided to conclude the interrogation, feeling they were closer than ever to solving the case. On December 12, 2016, police finally connected all the dots and identified Gerald Sullivan as the murderer. The text messages between Gerald and Ethan, along with security footage placing him at the scene, painted a clear picture. Gerald had been using Ethan's relationships with older women to financially support himself, but when Ethan threatened to distance himself and cut off that income, Gerald took drastic action. His growing desperation stemmed from a secret life that investigators uncovered during their search of his apartment. Among his personal belongings, investigators found hidden cameras and recording equipment, revealing that Gerald had been secretly filming Ethan's sexual encounters with his elderly lovers. These recordings were sold to adult filmmakers in Japan, where older white women were seen as highly desirable, generating significant income that Gerald used to support his secret drug addiction. Ethan had recently uncovered this betrayal and was furious. Ethan threatened to expose his father's illegal operation, which would have left Gerald financially ruined and facing potential prison time. In the face of this threat, Gerald saw only one way to keep Ethan silent. On December 8th, he went to the Palm Breeze apartments, where he confronted his son. The argument escalated rapidly, with Ethan refusing to be manipulated any longer. Enraged and desperate, Gerald pulled out a gun and shot Ethan while he sat defenseless in the bathroom. Once the police pieced together the evidence, they obtained a warrant for Gerald's arrest. On the evening of December 12th, police moved in to make the arrest at Gerald's small apartment in Hollywood, Florida. He was found pacing nervously. When the officers arrived, he didn't resist, but he looked both shocked and defeated. Gerald had hoped to evade justice, but now it was clear that the walls were closing in on him. His arrest sent shockwaves through the Sullivan family. Ethan's mother, estranged from both her son and ex-husband, was devastated by the news. Ethan's older brother, who had distanced himself from the family's turmoil, was in disbelief that their father could commit such a monstrous act. Meanwhile, Ethan's elderly lovers were left in shock, many unaware of Gerald's exploitation of his son. The case had taken a dark turn, exposing not just a murder but a web of manipulation and exploitation that culminated in the tragic death of a young man. As the trial commenced, the prosecution laid out a compelling case detailing the toxic relationship between Gerald and Ethan. They presented evidence of Gerald's financial exploitation, the hidden cameras, and the text messages that revealed the depth of their conflict. Emotional testimonies from friends and family highlighted Ethan's dreams and the betrayal he felt upon discovering his father's actions. Gerald's defense team attempted to portray him as a troubled man, struggling with addiction and financial pressures, hoping to evoke sympathy. However, the prosecution's narrative of greed and desperation resonated deeply with the jury. Ethan's mother, present in the courtroom, fought back tears as she listened to the details of her son's life and tragic end. The atmosphere was heavy with tension, as both sides prepared to argue the complexities of a father-son relationship that had turned deadly. The prosecution was headed by Assistant State Attorney Carla Puglia, a determined and detail-oriented lawyer. She made a compelling case, arguing that Gerald's motive for killing Ethan was unmistakable. Puglia presented evidence revealing that Gerald had secretly recorded Ethan's intimate encounters with older women and sold the footage to adult film producers in Japan. The profits from these illegal sales supported Gerald's hidden drug addiction. Puglia highlighted that Ethan had found out about this and threatened to expose his father, pushing Gerald to commit the desperate act of murder. In contrast, defense attorney Seth Gummel, 52, attempted to argue that Gerald wasn't entirely accountable for his actions. Gummel, recognized for his composed manner and experience with high-profile cases, argued that Gerald's addiction and financial struggles had pushed him to a breaking point. The defense portrayed Gerald as a troubled man driven to commit murder by circumstances beyond his control, including his secret drug use and mounting debts. Meanwhile, Ethan's family, particularly his mother, Linda Sullivan, was visibly emotional throughout the trial. Linda was heartbroken over the violent loss of her son, and the details of Gerald's actions only deepened her devastation. As the prosecution laid out their case, she and other family members fought to hold back their tears. After several hours of deliberation, the jury finally reached a verdict. On December 20, 2017, Gerald Sullivan was convicted of second-degree murder. Judge Robert Green sentenced him to 30 years in prison. The reaction was mixed. Ethan's family felt the sentence was too lenient given the crime's severity, while others believed it was a just outcome considering the circumstances. The verdict provided some closure for Ethan's family, but the emotional scars from the trial and Gerald's betrayal would linger. This case highlighted how hidden lives and dark secrets can have tragic repercussions. After the trial, everyone involved faced their own paths, marked by both resolution and ongoing challenges. Gerald Sullivan, now serving a 30-year sentence in a maximum security facility in Belle Glade, Florida, experienced a life vastly different from his previous one. The harsh realities of prison life challenged him daily, forcing him to confront the consequences of his actions and adapt to the unforgiving environment around him. Prison reports indicated that Gerald Sullivan kept a low profile during his incarceration, rarely engaging with other inmates and showing little remorse for his actions. His daily routine was a stark contrast to the lavish lifestyle he had once enjoyed. Meanwhile, Ethan's former lovers, Dolly Patterson and Midge Feinstein, were also deeply affected by the aftermath of the case. Both women struggled with the revelation of Gerald's exploitation and the loss of Ethan, who had been central to their lives. Both women, once central figures in Ethan's life, faced their own tragic ends. Dolly Patterson, a former Broadway star in her youth, passed away on July 10, 2017, from complications related to old age. Her health had steadily declined after Ethan's murder, and she struggled with profound emotional turmoil over losing him. The distress and heartbreak over her dumb lover, as she often referred to him, seemed to accelerate her decline. The intense media scrutiny and her feelings of betrayal weighed heavily on Dolly, contributing to her declining health. Midge Feinstein, another of Ethan's wealthy admirers, passed away from a heart attack on December 17, 2023. Known for her elegance and sharp wit, Midge had been deeply shaken by Ethan's murder. Despite her no-nonsense attitude, the scandal left its mark on her, and the years following the case were filled with quiet emotional strain. Both women, once so glamorous and influential, were forever linked to a story of love, manipulation, and betrayal. The stress of Ethan's murder and the shocking revelations about Gerald's illegal activities had worn Midge down. Her sudden death was a stark reminder of the toll the case had taken on those closest to it, physically and emotionally. The strain she endured, both from the media frenzy and her own inner turmoil, proved too much. The case's ripple effect showed how greed and secrecy could destroy lives, leaving a trail of heartbreak and loss for everyone involved. Ultimately, the scandal stood as a tragic example of the dangers of manipulation and exploitation. Each person's fate was indeed a reflection of the deep and lasting impact the tragedy had on their lives. From Gerald's downfall and imprisonment to the emotional and physical toll on Ethan's lovers, the consequences of the crime extended far beyond the murder itself. The lives of those connected to Ethan were forever altered, marked by grief, regret, and the heavy burden of secrets brought to light. This tragic chain of events served as a harsh reminder of how far-reaching the effects of one individual's actions can be.